Today we are going to learn about the docker ignore file. So what is this file? This file tell docker which file should not send as a part of the build context. This sounds very small, but it's an important docker concept because it's connect directly to something called build context that we have already learned. Remember that dot whenever we are trying to build an image. This dot actually means send the current directory as the build context. Suppose you are having a project user service and the structure of the user service looks like this. When we build the image for this particular project, the Docker may send all of this file as a build context. But do we actually need all of them? The answer is no. So what a Docker actually need to build the image? For our Spring Boot application, multi-stage build might need max to max, the pom.xml, the src, and the docker file. We don't actually need this git, idea, readme.md, logs, target, all of these things we don't need to build our image. So to ignore this file, the files which we don't want as a build context, that time we need the docker ignore file. Let's see where to create the docker file. As you can see in this folder structure, we are having the docker file in the root file, right? So to the next we have to create the docker ignore, and just like the docker file, we don't have to give any extension. The docker ignores has no extension. And what the docker ignore file will contain, for a typical Spring Boot project, we can add these things: .git, .idea, tar.logs, tar.temp, tar.class. We are saying docker to ignore these files while building the context. If you think should we avoid these files or not, the target folder for the first docker file, we have included this target folder to copy the jar file, and we have created the jar file manually. But in the multi-stage build, we have seen that we are creating the jar file inside the docker. Basically, we don't need this target folder. For the Git repository can contain lots of information like the objects, the refs, logs, like this. We don't need this file to build our Spring Boot application. This idea, it may be generated if you are using the Eclipse IDE. So this one also not needed while building your application. Just like that, the logs, temp, .class, all of these files, you don't need to build our Spring Boot application. That's why we are keeping all the files inside our docker ignore file. If you are using Git, you may notice there we are having a git ignore file. So what is the difference between the git ignore and docker ignore? Because this might be a interview question for you, we just have to tell git ignore tells us to don't track the files, but here it tells to don't send the files as build context. So their purpose are different, they solve different problems. Suppose you are having a node module file, so you can add this in git ignore and docker ignore as well. Here one more question arises: can we use docker ignore as a security boundary? Suppose you are having a .env folder and it's contain a db password, something like this. For now, just know that, assume that you have accidentally done this copy dot. So the project will include all your secret information also. So it is always better to don't put your secrets into the docker image. Later on we will learn about how to use the environment variable, docker compose, and Kubernetes secret, AWS secret manager to manage the secrets. How the docker file help us? Suppose we are having the project src, git, target, and they are containing some files, and the files are having some size like 5 MB, 100 MB, 200 MB, like this. Total it's becoming a 305 MB, but your docker build may not require this target and git, right? So if you ignore this much, for now the src only contain 5 MB, And if you add here docker file and everything also, it will hardly become 10 to 20 MB. So the main use for this docker ignore will be help for build performance. While building the image, the performance will be more better. An important clarification, your docker ignore file does not make the final docker image smaller. Its primary task is to control the build context, and the image size depends upon what your docker file actually puts. Let's see a complete setup for the docker ignore. We'll try to add that in our current project and we'll build the image. As you can see here, I have opened my user service project inside the VS Code. Now the docker file is exist here. In the root folder, we'll create the docker ignore file. Let's create the docker ignore file. Docker ignore. That's all. We don't have to give any extension. Now we'll add some files that we don't have to for the build context. Currently we don't have any so much extra file because this is a simple Java project we have written for testing. We'll exclude this target folder. Target. For now, we'll just exclude the target folder and we'll see. First we'll check what are the image currently we have in our local machine. As you can see, we have two images. I'll delete them. I have removed all the image currently it was having in my local machine. Now we'll build the image for the user service project. Docker build -t user service and a version of 1.0 or something and dot. Let's see how it is being processed, and you can see the docker build has been started. Now the build has been done and we can track the process throughout this log. Here transferring docker file, loading the metadata, load the docker ignore. Load docker ignore. You can see after that only it is transferring the data into the context. For transferring into the context, first it is loading whatever the files we have to ignore. And with this lesson we have done with our module number 3. The next module will be module number 4, where we are going to learn about Docker Compose. Until that, practice whatever we have done till now. See you in the next session.